Hey, how y'all doing? I do understand that. Yeah, I had forgotten about something that I was waiting on, and so in the middle of the me speaking, I had to just stop and then go check on what it was that I was waiting on to make sure that I had not missed when it arrived. And so, excuse me about that. I do apologize. I do want to get back onto what I was saying. You don't know. The way that I was speaking before, sometimes when I'm speaking, I have to make sure that I speak with the correct etymology, because speaking with without the correct etymology sometimes can lead me into places of thought. What it does is it allows the beings in its consciousness that are ruthless, and the people in its consciousness that are ruthless, to operate upon my mind with spells. And so I had to make sure my etymology was right before I begin um, going back into the thing that I was talking about before. And then there's because some of the things that I'm saying, it does vibrate against what is evil. I am definitely paying a lot of attention to my etymology, making sure that the things that I say um, do not go against the beings that um, love me and that look after me and guide me and go against the evil that tries to harm me and my family. Family is adored. I adore you all. I have a gorgeous family. My family now and my family before are absolute gorgeousness. And so, yes, I'm a reincarnation. I adore my incarnations. I adore every being in the consciousness that come together and make me. I adore you. I adore you too for loving me and wanting to be me, um, all over and over again, and making me such a gorgeous being. I adore you. I adore you, gorgeous earth. I adore you, gorgeous stars. I know that the sun is gorgeous. I know that the stars that look at us and look out for us are gorgeous, because the earth is gorgeous and they speak to this earth every day. And so I know the earth is a reflection of them. And so every being that looks after me and my family, y'all are adored. Y'all are adored. That want to be us, that love us, um, and that are compassionate. And the beings that look after me and that guide me and that connect with me are very much compassionate. And the beings that connect with my family are very much compassionate. I adore you. I adore you. Um, so where I had left off before was talking about I think I was talking about ancient people, and I was talking about the way that ancient people are so much more they were so much smarter, and they're actually more advanced than the people that we look around at today, because we don't really understand consciousness, and because so many people don't connect with the sacred text and they don't know how to read it. The history is very much written, and so the way that they wrote the history, it tells you. And I'm not the only person who's seen this in the history and in the sacred text. I actually was listening to a lecture by Phil Valentine, the darker hued one, not the lighter hued one that passed away. But the darker hued Phil Valentine was talking about how he had seen it in some of the texts that there was a civilization. I mean, and I don't call this civilization because a lot of it isn't civilized. Some of it is, but a lot of it isn't. But that there was a society before the society now that was very technologically advanced. And I've seen it too. I've also seen those texts, and I've also seen the texts. And I'm actually looking for them right now because I really want to um, be able to like quote them and tell you, interpret them for you. Um, but they talk about the society before the society that was started over again. Now, one of his theories about it is that the society, he says, his theory is that there was a nuclear war. And so when he talks about it, he says he feels that there was a nuclear war that wiped out a whole lot of the conscious, the people, and then everyone had to start all over again. And so that's why they had such advanced technology before, um, and then there was a difference. But the thing is, it does say in the text that there was advanced technology before, and so that is the reason why they were able to make such precise cuts in the stone, and they were able to build such magnificent things. A lot of the lighter hued will come in and talk about aliens, and there very much are extraterrestrial beings. It would be odd and strange, and I think quite um, and ridiculous to think, honestly, that in this vastness of this consciousness, the space and this consciousness, that we are the only beings to exist in the way that we are on these planets. So of course there are more, and I know there are more too, because I've been honestly I understand it, because I perceive it. I've been told that there are more, but at the same time, it's strange to believe that there isn't. And then, but the extraterrestrial that we do connect with aren't the aliens that come from other planets. It is the greater consciousness. It is the stars. It is the earth itself that imparts to us the guidance and the development and the evolution that leads us to where we can connect with those other beings in those other planets, that will port us to those other beings in those other planets, and that will guide us to the technologies that will help us to do that, and guide us to the conscious understanding of the consciousness and connection to the greater consciousness that will help us to do that. And so but in the text, it does say that there is a very advanced technology in those societies, and at some point, what happened was, at some point we were started over again, with a few people rather than how many people there were, because a whole lot of people were taken off the earth. And the reason why those people were taken off the earth was because there were so many who were connecting with ruthlessness and connecting with the sinister. And so once it becomes so filled with so many sinister, then a lot of people have to be taken off, because they'll destroy it. They'll destroy the earth. They'll destroy everything. Because those who are ruthless and who connect with the sinister, they'll destroy any person, anything, anyone, any being, for any selfish, ridiculous reason. And so they cultivate premature death in order to do that. And so anything that cultivates that will kill everything. So, and there are beings that watch over us that are much more advanced than us. I'm not talking about aliens, the way that a lot of the lighter hued perceive, say that they are aliens that come over to the earth and that guide us and that show us technologies. I'm talking about beings in a greater consciousness. You see, the people back, the ancients, what we call ancients now, because there were ancients before those were ancients, and then some of us are our own ancestors. I particularly am my own ancestor. And to say now, I adore every being in his consciousness, that every compassionate, loved being, because I love you, and I'm so grateful that they love me to come together and make me on this consciousness. I adore you and I love you, and I'm so grateful that you want to be me. I like me. I'm glad you like me. So thank you. And my folks are so gorgeous, and so I like them too. I liked them. I liked my folks then, and I like them now. And so I'm glad you all like us, and I'm glad you all like to keep making us as you do, and keep us alive. And so you are appreciated. Thank you. So there were all of these, gorgeous, highly advanced technologies. And then it says in the text, even there's about what happened with the reason why he thinks there was a nuclear war that wiped out a lot of the earth, was because it looks like there's a warning. Now, when the lighter hues see it, they see it as a warning against electricity. But the reality is, the warning would be more against what people do with electricity and the natures of people. And so A lot, like I said, people were taken out. They started again with fewer people, much fewer people, um, to regrow the society. And so, and those people, looks like those people were in Egypt. Egypt was the ones who have the history. They are the ones who built the most gorgeous, the most gorgeous and most advanced society. Then the Egyptians and the Native Americans were looked like very much connected with the Egyptians. If you look at some of the walls of the Native American pyramids, you'll also see very dark hued people. So you could see where they were definitely connected. Plus, I understand from the greater consciousness that Africa was coming to America way before the Western Europeans did. And the way that they showed me is they said all they had to do was sail straight and they would run into the Americas. And so they were doing that way before the Europeans were doing it. And so they did have a connection to Africa here. And so that's why you see all those darker hued people on those walls. And that's why, the religions are similar. They know they're not cannibalistic. The way that the Northern Europeans describe some of the spiritualities of the Native Americans is cannibalistic, which does not make sense. If you even talk to Native Americans today, the way that they describe the spirituality and the nature of the people have nothing to do with that. And so it does not make any sense. But filter through the mind of people who have a culture of worshiping ruthlessness, someone being cannibalistic and having a spirituality where they were murdering people by pulling out people's hearts while they were still breathing and bashing people's heads in and pulling out and eating their brains daily, and having the ridiculousness of believing that if you have to have blood spilled into the ground to have the sun come up every day, which doesn't make any kind of sense. So I really tell you all, please don't believe that. Please don't believe that. That is a ridiculous point of view on ancient people, and that is not what they believed when they were talking about taking out the heart and the brain. They were talking about of spirits, of spiritual natures. That's alchemy that they are reading and misinterpreting on those tomes and in those dials. So no, the Native Americans were not doing that. And then the Europeans worshiped ruthlessness. So I imagine, and I'm not saying that I'm racist against white people, it has nothing to do with this, but they have a culture of worshiping ruthlessness and worshiping what is sinister and being very warlike and bloodied. And they even have cookbooks that detail ways to eat babies and those kind of things. And they have societies right now all over the world, even in their I do not call it elite. One of the reasons why I do not call it elite is because the greater consciousness makes sure that I don't call things what they're not. So they teach me not to call that an elite society, because those aren't elite humans. Elite humans do not worship ruthlessness. And they don't let me call anything like the some people call it, I don't call they say the people operate in darkness, so you can't call them Illuminati. And so they won't even let me say it. If you notice, they won't even let me say it out of my mouth. And so I can't call those societies that, but they have these kind of things where they are moving children around. And when these people speak about these societies that these secret societies that they go in, it's really Satanism. If you look at Bohemian Grove, that is Satanism. And so they have those rituals and they have these children and these, and they do terrible things to children. One of the reasons why Satanists do so many things to children is because, like I said, it makes a bigger wave in the consciousness, because there's more of an emotional attachment to children, and children are absolutely innocent. So the mind and the being who could destroy or harm or murder ruthlessly a child is one that is very, very accessible and very, very, that's very fertile soil for a ruthless demonic being. And so that's why those societies do those kind of things. That's why they harm children, and they cultivate that kind of activity within those societies. And as they cultivate them, those demons cultivate within those people, and it makes them much more able to do that over and over again as they live. And so, and then they do gain a kind of power. People don't really realize that astral projection is real, like I described in so many other videos. Astral projection is very much real, and so they do get sinister powers to do very sinister things in the society, and it's something that people don't really understand right now, because as the population grew, as people started to cultivate with the colonization of the Western European societies who were behind and not ahead, and did not understand about evolution, and did not understand that there was advanced technology before the advanced technology that you see now. Once people were repopulating those areas in the Egypt and the Native Americans, they were all connecting. The Aborigines, they understood that if they stayed, if they learned, if they cherished and connected and loved the consciousness around them, then they would evolve, and they would be able to connect in a way where they could port and go to other planets and port and keep living over and over again. Because also, when you have a connection to ruthlessness and you're very, very wicked, the consciousness will stop reincarnating you. You'll stop being made. People, you'll stop coming together and being made, because there are beings that will go against that. And so once they go against that, and they're going to go against it because it's for the greater good, they're going to go against it because the consciousness wants to live, and anything that wants to live is going to get rid of things that will easily kill it, or that will kill it, that will poison it. Beings who are sinister are poison in the consciousness. They cultivate premature death. And people in the consciousness who are cultivating premature death and who are sinister and wicked, they are very much poison. And so it's going to stop making people who are poison. And so the ancients understood that. The Egyptians understood that. And so they didn't continue. What they did was they wanted to live out in the bush. They loved that. They wanted to worship Yahweh. And so that's a lot of what is being talked about in the sacred text, wanting to worship Yahweh. Yahweh being the God of the people in the bush. That is what they talk about when they talk about, when we get into the story. We haven't gotten to the story of Moses yet in my sacred text interpretations, because I'm still going through Genesis. I thought it was really cool to be able to go script by script in each chapter. And to really be able to show it to you. But when we get to Exodus, and we get to where society changes and they want to worship the people in the bush, that's what that's about, wanting to worship the evolution of life. And in worshiping that, they understood that if they lived with the animals, not with the animals so much as sleep next to the animals, but I mean, if they loved what was around them and had that cultivation of living and loving nature, living and loving the consciousness around them, they knew that if they were, and as a matter of fact, somebody else talks about this. There's an author, David Chilton Pierce, and he writes a book called, what is it called? Chilton Pierce. Let me look it up right quick, because there's a really good book where he talks about children who are born, who live in the country and who grow up in, that kind of environment where they are, it might be Joseph Chilton Pierce. Yeah, The Biology of Transcendence. So, okay, so it's Joseph Pierce. That's what I'm looking at. Yes. So his book, Biology of Transcendence, also talks about this, how when children grow up and they have this kind of, I think it's called didactic way of where they're listening to the birds and the trees, and they're interacting with animals and nature and grass, and when they grew up in the country, like I had that kind of existence where we were always around animals, and we had horses around all the time. And my family is still around horses a lot. A lot of them have horses. And we were very, very much in the country. We were very much in his existence where we were in a village. A lot of times people would go fishing and they would share what they caught. And we played in the grass. We played in the woods. We had woods all around us all the time. We had farms around us all the time. And so, and I mean, we were surrounded by farms. And a lot of times what we would eat is the things that my grandmother would get from the farmer when he had excess. And so when people grow up with that surrounding, their bodies are much stronger. The hearing is much better. The eyesight becomes a lot better. They become more in tune with nature, and they learn much more and much faster and much better. And see, the people, the ancients knew when they were cultivating, repopulating, excuse me, they made a choice to live that way. And so what happens when the Western Europeans march into Africa and they march into the Native Americans, what they think is a society that's less advanced is not that at all, because those people made a choice to live that way. They did not, if they wanted to make those technological advancements that the Europeans had made, they could have made those. As a matter of fact, you're talking about people who were living around these gorgeous pyramids, and these people that were living around the gorgeousness of what was made in ancient Egypt, these gigantic statues and these gorgeous buildings and these temples, in the way that they were making them. And then you go all over Africa. They're not just pyramids in Egypt. There are pyramids all over Africa. There are all kinds of stone structures all over Africa that were absolutely gorgeous. And these societies, they chose to use adobe to build their houses. They chose to use those grass huts and the natural cement to build their houses, because they knew that that would not harm the earth. When you go over to the Native Americans, same things. And then you see how the way that they planted. They even, now that they are researching the history, they understand that the Amazon was planted. That's it was almost like a gigantic garden, because so many of those trees and those plants were purposely planted there, and in order to make that what it is. And so these people knew so much about botany. They knew so much about the earth and the consciousness around them, and they cherished it and they loved it and they wanted to take care of it purposely, because they knew that that was the best way to evolve. And so it was a choice to live that way, to live in those homes the way that they were, to build with stone or with adobe or with natural cement or with grass, the way that they did. They knew the climate that they had, they could withstand it. And so you have this gorgeousness of people who evolved for all of those centuries with alongside the animals and alongside the jungles, and taking care of the earth in the way that they did. I mean, you imagine the air was so much cleaner, the water was so much cleaner for so many years. I mean, think about how many years those people existed on those lands, with that water being so clean, with those lands being pristine, with the gorgeous earth. They had gold everywhere. You know what I mean? So it wasn't that they didn't value things that were beautiful, but they were not ruthless with those things that were beautiful. And so they were able to cultivate them. They wore gold. They wore different beautiful things. They used gold in those tombs. And so and they used them to build those objects. And so the people chose to do that. They chose to love the earth and to understand that the earth is a conscious being, excuse me. And they had a connection to the greater consciousness, where if you notice that anytime you see paintings or drawings of the sun, when what most of you, because I know that there were ancients before the ancients that you all understand, but from what most of you understand, when you see the ancients, you see these drawings and these paintings of the sun, and the sun always has a face. Well, that's because they knew then that the sun is living. So they knew the stars are living. They didn't, and so because they understood that they are living, they had a connection to the consciousness that way. Oh, these Western Europeans, when they go around, the only reason they're able to go around and collect so much information is because they've based, with the colonization, and based so much of the world on money. In the way that they set up their societies, so much the world is on money, and you need all of these passports and all of these different things to go anywhere because people are afraid of different other people coming into their lands. But back in those days, it wasn't so hard to travel. It wasn't so hard to connect. And because of the way that a lot of the people chose to live, it wasn't about ruthlessness, and it wasn't all about money. And so they can connect with those stars, and they can connect with the planets and know that the planets are living. Thanks, Jupiter. I am researching the planets right now to learn the characteristics of each of the planets. But Jupiter is very protective, and that is all of those planets are living, and so you should know that they knew that. And so being able to perceive knowledge about this, the solar system, and about the planets, and about space, the Western Europeans just wonder, well, how did these people know these things? And they think it had to be aliens that visited the earth. It was the connection to the consciousness that they could perceive those things. Just like I perceive things because I connect with a greater consciousness. They connect with a greater consciousness too. And so in the people like me who connect with this greater consciousness, to let you know, we were all having a hard time for a while. And I still was going through things, because as we connect, there are beings and there are people who move against us because they are very much connected to the sinister. And so that's going to happen. It's just like the Hebrews in Egypt. Hebrews are Egyptians. When they have to when they disconnected from one kind of society to transform the society into something else, they went through a desert. And so sometimes we go through things because there is a ruthlessness that comes up against us. But it does not mean, and so in the ruthlessness, because they have based the society on money, a lot of that comes up against us because they try to use money against us. But my process of thought is fantastic, and it has nothing to do with the reason why I had gone through some of the financial difficulties that I had gone through was because of that ruthlessness that was attacking me or coming up against me. It had nothing to do with my process of thought and my ability to connect with the consciousness around me. And so back to what I was saying. So the ancients knew the stars were living. They were connected to that being who speaks lightning that connects with me. I adore you, and I'm so grateful that you teach me the things that you teach me, and being connected to that being is the greatest thing ever. And there are probably other beings in the consciousness, because I imagine those are the beings who speak lightning. They are able to, and there are other beings in the consciousness besides that being that we also connect to, that are interdimensional. And so it's not just that being, it's so many others. And so they were able to connect with those things because they made friends with the consciousness, and they understood that it was living, and they understood to take care of it and to love it. And then the consciousness, and that was the way to advancement. And so, like I said, they stayed in those societies where they built with those natural things, and they loved the earth, and they made sure that the earth could breathe by making sure that those trees were planted, and they learned botany, and they learned to take pristine care of their bodies. And they were so focused on evolution and advancement, they understood that there were other planets out there to port to and that kind of thing, because of that connection with the greater consciousness. So that's why you see these societies that also do that, like the Sumerians and the Zoroastrians, when they connect, and they know that they worship energy. When they talk about energy, they're talking about that being who speaks lightning, that kind of thing, and worshiping same Yahweh. Most of these societies are basically when their spirituality, when you see these gorgeous spiritualities, it's about having compassion and being able to evolve through the evolution of compassion and connecting with the consciousness around you. So if you so he went again. Then he was started talking about the Pope. One of the things about the Pope in the Vatican that I was saying, I don't know if I said this in the other videos, but it's important to know. The Pope, the Vatican was established. You know, all of that Roman stuff was established by Constantine. That was very much a conqueror. He did dilute and misinterpret the Egyptian scriptures. Most of the people probably in that area, I'm pretty sure, were getting their spirituality from the Egyptians. And so that was misinterpreted, diluted, all kinds of things. And so then he came up with Christianity from that. And so a lot of the things that he talks about within the documentary is about that, how they came up with those concepts in Christianity. But that isn't how the Egyptians came up with their concepts. And so I want to make sure to say that the Egyptian concepts of who they are and their spirituality came from the consciousness and the greater consciousness. It did not come from these dilutions of their spirituality, because that spirituality that most of all these people have are mainly based on theirs, on the Egyptians. And the Pope is a king. Something that was impressed upon me that I really understood is the Pope is a king and has always been a king. The Pope is not a religious leader. That is a king who bases his kingdom and the policies of his kingdom upon religion. Okay, and so back in those days when there were kings, there, of course, there's still a few kings in Europe, but when there were kings all over Europe, it's weird to me, it's strange to me. I actually believe that a lot of them understood that it was a kingdom, and that's why it was so easy. Some of them had cast it off. Some of them, if they did not have the offspring to truly believe, I think it kind of happened to them the same way it happened to the enslavers. The Africans here. When the Africans came over here and they were on those plantations, so many things happened to dilute what they believed in and have them pick up Christianity. And so I think the same thing happened over in Europe when the Pope took over that established that kingdom. I believe in the beginning, other kings probably completely understood that was a kingdom based on religion. But as they had offspring, as they evolved, a lot of those people lost sight of that, because I believe that a king would know a king. If you knew that if you were a king of your own lands, say in Britain, and you looked over at the Vatican, when you see a king, if you're a king. So I think, through a lot of just the cultivation in their society, that sense of that was lost. And so when they look at the Pope now, they look at him as a religious leader, even though on all accounts, for all the times that has been established, those popes have been voted, have come to power through politics, through other things, things other than the religion. And the policies of the popes actually made no real sense. In the beginning, the popes were allowed to have girlfriends, and they were allowed to have wives and families, and then to have all of these people come into a society where they are just beholden to this one person and not having the humanness of being able to have a family, of being able to have connections with others. Leaving that out of the equation is kind of unreal and odd for anyone to ask for. And so I think it became less and less based on humanity and based on spirituality as that evolved. And so that's where we got to where we have it now. Well, not we, but where it is now. Well, there are so many issues with it. The papacy, the Vatican is where a lot of the mafia would put their money. For instance, they would put their money in the Vatican bank in order to hide it, because that is a kingdom and they're beholden to their own laws. And then so many things that happen, they can basically make up their own laws within that kingdom. And so people look at it as religion because they were able to have people forget that they were a kingdom and have it be based upon religion, but it's really, everything about it is based on being a kingship, based on being based on, that person being the king and the ultimate ruler of that land. Because if you realize, is the ruler of that land. See, that's what I'm talking about when I talk about my mic. Um I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just want to make sure, maybe it was the way that I moved. Um Everything about it is based on the same way you would base a kingship. And so it's weird to me for anyone to look at that as anything other than that. Um so Actually, then he was talking about the cross, and the cross being equal arms in a circle, which makes, a lot of sense. Because if you look at the sun, in your vision, if you look directly at the sun, you are through, if you look at the sun as a reflection on anything, you'll see equal, beams coming out. And a cross, or in like, it might be a few more beings that come out of there. So it makes sense to see the sun that way. And so, but then he says, well, that's where the cross was based on, but he didn't really understand that. That cross hanging, killing Jesus upon the cross is not where that comes from. That's actually something that comes out of the sinister, because the cross means the crossroads. So within religion, cross is a crossroads. When you come to the crossroads, it's just like if you have any connection with the sinister or contact, because you don't have to have connection. They go to a crossroads whenever they are asking the devil for something. So sometimes they'll come to a crossroads when they come to that. And any time you are called to a place where you could do something sinister or do something good, you're at a crossroads. And so that's why even in the old stories, when they talk about people who, I talked about before, that man who wanted to play guitar and be the greatest guitarist in the world. There are other stories like that. There's not just one about the guitarist. There are so many others about so many different things. And in all of those stories, they always talk about a crossroads. That's because in those stories, those people from old, they understood about what a crossroad is. A crossroad is a time when you come and you can do something evil or you can do something good. That's when you're at the crossroads. And so when you allow Jesus is the revolution. The revolution is born from love. And so whenever you go with love and you go with something born from love, then you do something that is not sinister. So if you allow Jesus to die on the cross, then you're allowing Jesus to die at the crossroad. That means you're allowing your revolution to die at that crossroad if you allow Jesus to die on the cross. And so what that was implemented within religion is it was a control thing, and it was to spell people into having the control, into killing their own revolution. And so many people, when they do have this revolutionary spirit in them, they come into a place where they think they're supposed to die. A lot of people do that. They martyrize people and say that because they say that Jesus was supposed to die in order to get Christianity started. And Christianity disconnects you from the greater consciousness in so many different ways. And so, and that's one of the reasons why I started asking the greater consciousness about that, because I thought that cannot be the right thing. And then, to have religion have this kind of dialogue where it's trying to tell us that we're supposed to be saved. Well, how are we supposed to be saved? And at the same time, those who are revolutionary within the consciousness are dying. And we are believing that they are supposed to die in order to save others. So that's a contradiction that doesn't make any sense. And then that is a sinister way that Satanists have mixed themselves within the religious, because the religiosity, because like I said before, the weird thing about Satanism and the weird thing about demonic beings is that they actually like those religions like Christianity and like Islam, because Christianity and Islam tells people things like that people are supposed to die in order to save others. It has so many different contradictions that they can use against others. And when they can put spells on your mind, when they can make you think a certain way, then that's when they really have a lot of power, and they can kind of imprison you and do a lot of terrible things to you. And that's when you start to disconnect from the consciousness. And then one of the worst things that a person can do is to believe that it is them who is sinister rather than the sinister acting upon them if they are not sinister. Because that's one of the reasons why we do say people are sinful. They have people saying that people are naturally sinful. That is not true. That people are not naturally sinful. Sin is a word, it's an abbreviation for sinister. So anytime you ever see sin, that means sinister. Sinister is something that is denoting of someone who purposely wants to do evil. So people are not naturally evil. I'm certainly not naturally evil. I know that my family members are not naturally evil. Our vibration coming up from the ground is such a gorgeous thing. They are so absolutely beautiful. They are just the beautiful, beautiful vibration coming up off the earth unto the consciousness. And so that is not real, and if you believe that you are naturally sinister, then what happens is when the sinister acts upon you, then it's easy for you to believe that it's something that is wrong with you. And if you think it's something wrong with you, or that you invited it in, or if it's something that you are doing to yourself, then it's very much harder to get rid of. And if you think about it, if you have this kind of thought process that's natural to think in an evil, sinister way, then that is connecting you and cultivating you into a connection with evil and with sinister. And so what that does is it disconnects you from so many things that you should be connected to. It stops you from seeing so many things that you can perceive in this consciousness that so many people miss. It's so many things that I see every day that a lot of people completely miss that is happening around us, that that leads people to sinister and allows sinister people to get away with so many horrible things. Every president looks like goes through some sort of satanic ritual before they become president. When you look at some of the presidential speeches, one of the Bushes, as a matter of fact, a lot of times when he was speaking, he was doing witchcraft. He was saying spells into the consciousness. And I see that in a few presidential, speeches. There are so many things around you that if you connect with the greater consciousness, it will show you. I mean, I shouldn't say it. It's so odd for me to ever say it. Forgive me, y'all. But the consciousness will show you, will open your eyes and allow you to perceive that a lot of people are missing. And then that's a lot of the reason why people think that, okay, when they look at people in America, they think that they are dumb, but it's a disconnection. It's a disconnection with the greater consciousness, and that leads to things that are less smart. Believing that the world is really based on money. It's not a good way to believe. But if you do believe that, if you live for money, then you allow money to tell you what's good and what's bad. And anybody that allows money to tell them what is good and what's bad and who's smart and who isn't, is going, money will quickly ask you to do something unmoral, because money doesn't have morals at all. Money itself is not the root of evil, but the love of money is the root of evil. And the reason for that is because money does not have morals at all. It does not have morals. And so there might be a way for you to make money that is extremely immoral. And those who worship money will do that thing, because for them, money will be the guidance. It will lead them. It will tell them what's good, what's bad, what's okay to do, what's not okay to do. So, yeah, and there's so many different other things that he was talking about. Usually when people talk about fish, they talk about the flow of society, something that is flowing within water. Because you think about atmospheres to the stars. The air is water, because their society is so much, um, they need, the more, I'm going to say, the fish don't operate in such a way where they need, we burn a lot more heat. Um, do I want to say that we need more heat in order to operate, because we have more, and the stars need more heat, because the atmosphere really tells you about, um, the being that's in it. You need each being needs a particular atmosphere to live. The stars need that atmosphere that is, much colder, less dense. you know Ours is much more dense, and then the water is much more dense, and then the soil is much more. So, the atmosphere tells you a lot about the being. So the stars are much more hot. They're burning much more because they're doing so much more than we are. They're processing much more than we are. Um, and they're so much more advanced than us, that they need that atmosphere to operate in. And then they make the atmosphere for the planets to operate in. So the planets need that atmosphere provided to them by the stars. And then we need the planet's atmosphere to operate in, because of how we operate. And so, that's the way I'm going to describe it. But when they talk about fish in the ancients, they usually talk about the flow of society. And so he was talking about, and then they always talk about gods. And one of the things I think about all the time is because the Western Europeans don't really have the way that the ooh, excuse me. Am I speaking right? Hello? Yeah, the way that colonization has shaped us, we have lost touch with what things really are. And so all of these things that are being talked about in these societies are not gods. When they talk about deities, I wonder if that's the way I'm talking into the mic. I'm going to try to talk a little less, so I'm not blowing into it, and see if that it becomes less sensitive. The way that they talk about everything as a deity, everything is a god, everything must be aliens, because they don't understand the beauty and the technology that we have here. Like, for instance, besides the earth, the humans are and the beings that are around us that are interdimensional. They're the most advanced technology that we're going to have. We're never going to build anything that's more technologically advanced than we are. And so, a lot of people thinking that people can build a separate sun and that kind of thing, it just absolutely makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense. And so, hopefully this will be understood again, because before I had a problem with it being too low, and so now I'm hoping that I don't have a problem with it being too loud. And I'm going to hope that, yeah, it's still working really well. Because maybe that's what it was. I don't know what was cutting off the mic. And so, like, I'm hoping that it wasn't me, like, speaking into it and blowing into it. But yeah, they don't know. And so they call everything a deity. Everything that they were talking about is not some sort of God in the sky, that kind of thing. That's not what they were talking about. When they were talking about love, they're talking about love itself and worship, the worship of love. And when they were talking about war, they're talking about the worship of war and conflict. And so everything is not a God. And then they even talk about, like, when you look at Catholicism, the way that it started back in those days, they were worshiping Mary. And right now they still pray to Mary. So how is it that they got this concept of praying to Mary? So how could you have a concept to pray to Mary, knowing that Mary is the being that birthed Jesus, but is not a God? You see? Or their concept of what a God is, because what a God is really is anything that you worship and sacrifice for. So literally anything can be a God. Anything can be your God. But their concept of Mary is that Mary is a person that birthed the baby that was born out of greater, this God in the sky that just, made her pregnant. So, um, having that concept of it back in those days, that you all will call antiquities, how could you have this concept to worship her and to pray to her and ask for her help in this consciousness? If you thought that everything was a deity, if you thought that everything was some benevolent being in the sky that was much more powerful than human beings. So that doesn't make any sense. So there's a contradiction in itself. So anytime you start seeing those kinds of contradictions, then you know that there is some sort of misrepresentation, conception, understanding, translation of what is real in the consciousness. And I'm hoping you all hear this. So I'm still watching some parts of it because he was talking about a lot of things. Then he was talking about the volcano gods, and he was talking about anything like when Moses led the people out of Egypt, he was saying they were following a volcano. Okay, those Hebrews were Egyptians and they were not following a volcano. And it's odd to me for any person in this consciousness to believe that there are people on this earth that will go toward a volcano and to not understand that volcanoes were dangerous. Who would go towards something that dangerous as it's erupting? Because his concept of saying that was they had a cloud by night and a cloud by day and a light at night. Now, I know he was theorizing it, and he may not be saying that he just completely believed it. But at the same time, it still is odd for me for anybody to even pose that as a theory and not understand that those people in those times would know that volcanoes are very dangerous. And if you saw a volcano erupting, you would not go towards the eruption. I mean, people had been on this earth for a long, long time. And not only people, but people before those people. There was much more population before the people started over again. So to say that they didn't have a concept of what a volcano was doesn't make very much sense. It's just like when you talk about some of these creatures that people talk about, they don't have any concept of what they really were. When you talk about a vampire, you're talking about somebody who doesn't mature. They think vampires are these creatures that run around at night and really suck people's blood. But somebody that does not mature and somebody that takes the energy from you, sucks out your life energy to be near them. You know what I mean? And could kill you. That could kill you to be around somebody that's taking your life energy all the time and that don't ever mature. That's what they meant by people like vampire. And then when you talk about people like werewolves, and some of these creatures, Winnebago, what is it called, Winnebago or that's somebody who anybody knows. If you do any research, people who eat people tend to keep wanting to eat people. For some reason, there is something going on with eating human flesh. If people do it, they instantly become it's like an addiction to it, and so they want to do it over and over and over again. But it has something to do more probably with being filled with whatever demonic being that you are cultivating if you eat people flesh in your person, because it takes a lot to eat the self. You know what I mean? It's a lot of barriers that are broken when somebody is willing to eat people flesh. And so that is not something that people usually want to do normally. And a normal human being, we are literally against it. And we cannot imagine eating another person. And that is not something that we will ever want to do. But once it is done, then there's like an addiction or something that changes within the brain where a person will do it over and over again. And so that's what they were talking about when they talk about things like that. And so having spiritual animals is something that's real. I do have 2 spirit animals. I adore that I have 2 spirit animals. It's really cool. And they do, align with a lot of things that are in my nature. Um, and so I perceive that, but at the same time, and then too, like when we evolve the way that energy is, I do believe that we could become other beings besides human, and people can de-evolve into animals and not be human and become elephants or become cats and a lot of different things once they are not carnated, and so therefore their person, their soul or being is now cat instead of person, instead of human. um, because that's what I've been shown in the consciousness. Those are the things that I've been shown within the greater consciousness. And so, see, people had a connection to where they could perceive that kind of thing. And so, losing that connection through colonization, especially the way the Africans lost it, the Africans lost it a lot, by the same way a lot of people lost it. Native Americans, matter of fact, the Aborigines were like literally almost completely eliminated. And what it is that sinister nature goes against things that are not sinister, to be completely honest. And I say this to not to, like I said, I always say, it's not that I think that white people started off evil, but the cultivation in this society is very ruthless. And so as they went around the earth, that's what they were worshiping. They were doing extremely sinister things, even to get people connected to the religion that they were believing in. Was very sinister. They used very sinister means to get people connected to Christianity. Sinister things were being done. And I'm not even being connected to Muslim. There's so many contradictions within Islam. For instance, them not understanding what a woman, what the female is in the alchemy, that alchemical term in the text, and so them believing that women are supposed to be subservient, and then understanding what a woman is if you really perceive women as they are. That is such a contradiction. And you know what I mean? And there are evil and ridiculousness in both men and women upon the earth. But at the same time, looking at a woman and perceiving women as women are, it is such a contradiction to say that they should be subservient to men. And so a lot of the ways that these things have spread along the consciousness has been because of sinister things, sinister means, not understanding, misunderstanding, misinterpretations. Sometimes it's torture, trauma, and torment. So they're not even good ways that these things have spread. There was something else I think I wanted to say that he was saying, because I was just looking at it. If there is something else, I'll probably be back speaking about it. But it was so interesting to watch the documentary. And so I was like, I got to talk about some of these things. And then some of these things I'll be posting about. Because they're very different from the way he, and then, they always speak with that bias, because it's so, I find it so weird that people are so easily believing these things when they talk about pharaohs. It shouldn't be easy for you to believe that anybody at Gorgeous were so incestuous and that kind of thing. It's really, a it's really a strange things, the things that people have been the mind has been, of some people, have been fertile soil for. Somebody can plant the thought processes that they've planted within some of these minds. And so it's really about deprogramming the mind and connecting to the consciousness that we're in, and making friends with the conscious so that you can perceive it, and so that the things that will show you are not against you, or that you're not working against them, honestly. Because that's really what it is, so that you're not working against the things that will have you perceive what is true. But yeah, I'm going to get back to my documentary and a few other documentaries, because I'll be speaking on much more of this. And then I'm really like looking up a lot of things about herbs, and about what they mean, because those colors mean something. Every time you look at a fruit or a vegetable, when you look at the color coordinates with something within you. Like when you look at beets and they're red, and anything that is blue and red coordinates with the blood. So it's everything that you eat coordinate is it connects to something in the body. And so that's one of the things I'm researching now. I've been knew this for a long time, but I really want to like really go back into it, do much more research on it, and then connect. As I'm connecting, I'm perceiving it anyway. And so I've known this kind of things for years. I'm talking about 15, 20 years. I've been knowing these kinds of things, but because I'm coming on and I'm speaking about them publicly, and I've spoken about them publicly before, because like everywhere I go, I'm talking about it. But it's just, this is what I do all day every day anyway. So I mostly watch documentaries, and I mostly watch do a lot of reading and do a lot of connecting with the greater consciousness. It is like one of my favorite things, besides my art, and besides singing, and besides writing. This is my favorite thing. It's because this is my favorite thing too. So they're all my favorite things. The greater consciousness and the consciousness around us is, I love that I can connect the way that I connect, and I love that um, the consciousness is gorgeousness. So it's so beautiful. So I love it. I love to be able to connect, and I love to perceive. And so um, y'all, those who are compassionate, have a fantastic day. Um, and I am going to get back to you later. And like I said, I am working on chapter 39, and I'm still in Job. So I will definitely be back with those chapters after I finish, because right now I'm in 39, and like I'm reading, I read it, and then I read it, and then I read it, and then I'm doing the definitions, and then every time, and then too, even though I read it and then I do all the definitions, even when I come on and I do the videos about the chapters, if I take off that video and do, or if I do another video about the same chapter, I still get more dimensionally than I did before. So I'm even looking at chapter 38, like I'm gonna do chapter 38 again, just because I get more dimensionally from chapter 38 as I continue to do it. Seems like if I do it like a few times, you know, like the second and third time, I'm more and more dimensional with it. So, but yeah, 39 is coming up, 39 and 40, and then, like I said, more of Job, because Job is to be understood. I understand Job because I went through that attack. And when you go through something that Job went through, it is an attack. It is not, people like to look at it as a test. A lot of people like to look at life as a test. Um, it's life. Life is life. And when the sinister attacks, the sinister is ruthless. So that attack is a real attack. And so what Job went through is a real attack. When Satan showed up, when they say presenting themselves, that is the contemplation of the consciousness of that. And so that's a real attack. That's a real, being hurt. And so, too, because when you're being hurt by in the greater consciousness, it can look like a test. But to us, it's being hurt. So what Job went through, something really wanted to hurt Job. And so that's what I went through. Something really wanted to hurt me. But to the greater consciousness, that is so much more advanced, and sees so much more than we do, and can perceive so much more of us and so much more of life than we do, because they can see ahead, in our lives. Then it might look like, it might be perceived as a test or looks like a test, but to us, it's what he went through was really hurtful. And then it really was some things that he understood he had to change, and there was a lot of contemplation within that as he was going through all of those transitions, and I went through that too. So still in Job, still in 39 and 40, and I will see you in the next video.